Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 165 and the start of our 15th year of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew Puffin Flapdoodle Zumwalt.
Well, Santa had 8 reindeer. He looks like he ate the other 7.
Second, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom Razzle Dazzle Wifflewhack Haggis.
Hey, everybody, Merry Christmas. One man's toxic sledge is another man's potpourri.
Third, writer, actor, and director, Kyle Bumblefritz Dingleberry Fine.
You got my birth certificate. Shouldn't it be Cindy Lou Whom?
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabriel Mumble Fiddlesticks Rowald.
I'm feeling a little grinchy tonight.
Oh my. All right, let's poke the monkey, find out what we're discussing this month.
Ladies and gentlemen, mossy mountain meanies and gangly green grumps, welcome to the main event. Tonight, it's an all-out affray for 2 Dr. Seuss story adaptations. Will the live-action film finish first, or will animation achieve a wintertime win? In the first quarter, from the year 2000, written by Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman, directed by Ron Howard, starring Bill Irwin, Taylor Momsen, and Jim Carrey. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. In the second quarter, from 2018, written by Michael LeSueur and Tommy Sverdlow, directed by Yarrow Cheney and Scott Mosier, starring Rashida Jones, Cameron Seeley, and Benedict Cumberbatch. The Grinch!
Fun fact, one of these movies I've never seen, which was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So this time around was the first time I ever watched it. And I've seen The Grinch a lot because I have a 7-year-old and he loves that movie. Probably because one of his grandmas loves The Grinch. All right. Let's poke the monkey. And also, he won't watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We've asked him if he wants to watch it, and I think Jim Carrey scares him. I really do.
Oh, old rubber face himself.
Yep. All right.
Did you just try to poke the monkey again? I caught you doing that. You tried to get a double poke in.
Well, what I do on my time is my business, Kyle.
This is true. I love this because we're forcing Andrew to keep going back to the posters.
Yes, I like that.
We don't have a 2-poke budget though. Let's keep an eye on the bottom line here.
Yeah, you buy 2
How
pokes,
many
you
cow
get one free though.
What's a group of cow pokes called?
You're gonna have to take up the monkey wrangler.
Yeah, Lord. Okay, let's get into this. So I don't know.
Hold on. Let's move on to our first round, which is writing.
Yeah, let's do it. Ding dong. We're professional adults. I just had this argument with my wife where we tried to discuss whether or not I'm an adult, and we settled on technically. I'm technically an adult.
Ditto.
Okay, the writing of this. So I don't know who writes your scripts, but someone's very lazy and left out that these are both adapted from a Dr. Seuss tale, maybe because they didn't want to write written by Dr. Seuss and then 2 other people over and over again. But obviously, I think the most famous adaptation of this tale is the old animated short that we see every year around Christmas over and over again. And this is a case of many, many years later, them trying to stretch that tale out and make it into, something longer, deeper, more complex. That's how I direct. So I think and I think this might be something we come back to as well as comparing these to the source material, which can always be dangerous when you're looking at not talking about these movies in particular, but talking about what came first. The Grinch, the animated Grinch, feels much closer to me in spirit of writing. It's funny because I think they're a mixture. I think the Grinch in Jim Carrey's version, the Grinch Who Stole Christmas or whatever it's called, is the kind of evil curmudgeon with no redeemable side for a very long time. Whereas in the Grinch, the animated version, he has a softer side right away. So there's a less severe sort of character arc. He treats his dog well. You can see he's not all rough edges. So I think the choice of that adaptation was very interesting, how they wrote that character. And I think the movies feel and look a little different too, based on the Grinch's attitude in these films, how he's written. The Grinch, oh my God. The animated Grinch is very bright and lively. The other movie is kind of dark and brooding at times. But I don't know. It's hard to compare the writing because I think they split the original material into 2 pieces, one being focusing on the evil Grinch and one focusing very much on the story of the people in the city and the redemption arc and the misunderstanding. And it had more of a heartwarming story of, not being scared of people who may come off as unfriendly and opening your heart to other people. And there's a lot more of a moral leaning in the animated version. And I didn't get that as much in the live action version. Also, there are a lot of really kind of crazy sexual jokes that are shoehorned into the live action Jim Carrey version that I caught while listening. And I'm like a lightning rod for those because, I'm immature. Technically an adult is the term. So I'm very immature. So I caught those and I was like, damn, it's kind of like an episode of SpongeBob. I can sit down and watch SpongeBob because there's adult jokes in there that kids will never get. But there was some dirty stuff and a really unnecessary love story. And boy, that movie was stretched all to hell. Kind of like Jim Carrey's face. Right. And that's where I'll stop talking.
Yeah, the key party was okay.
Oh yeah.
And then the baby that looks like the wife's boss. I was just kind of he's like, wow, the baby kind of looks like my boss. I was like, wow, okay, this is
interesting.
Yeah,
this is what
choice.
you need to teach kids. This is what you got to teach kids. You're like, my daddy said that to my mom, and then he left. And it's like, oh no, don't talk about that.
Yeah, I thought the choice in, and both of them kind of did this, but How the Grinch Stole Christmas, how are we going to do this? I don't know. The Jim Carrey one is they give Cindy Lou Who was no more than 12, a bigger role, and I wasn't sure how I really felt about that in both of them. I did think it was interesting that they in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey one, that they took more time to kind of work out like why the Grinch is the Grinch, which is something that kids movies have kind of gotten into lately, is that it's not just good and bad, but sometimes bad guys have a reason for being the way they are. And movies have just kind of gotten more complicated, whereas Disney almost is, for the most part, gotten rid of bad guys in general. It's just really like two sides of a conflict. I think what was else going to say? Yeah, so I don't know. I thought I'm with. I haven't seen either of. I hadn't really actually sat down and watched either of these movies before. I've just kind of saw bits and pieces, so this was the first time, and I just assumed that I was going to like the Benedict Cumberbatch one more, and didn't really quite turn out that way. But I think it's kind of due to other categories that we'll get into.
Yeah, I would say that one of my biggest, I guess, the thing I didn't like the most about How the Grinch Stole Christmas was I actually just hated the fact that they did some weird background story about the Grinch, and it was all about him being bullied, and he turned into this evil, terrible creature because he was bullied. And I don't know. It felt very, I need to make this movie at least an hour and a half, otherwise no one will watch it kind of thing. And it can't be shown in theaters if it's not an hour and a half. So we need to come up with something. And it just felt very forced. It was like really not needed, overrated. And I think the Grinch did that as well, but not quite as bad. But I think that's why the focus with like Cindy Lou, with her family and the waffles and trying to go actually find Santa and trap him and all that stuff that went on. I think that was their padding that was more of the focus than with How the Grinch Stole Christmas. They definitely got into that. How did he become evil? I don't know. It just, I just didn't, I don't know. I don't like that part of the story. It's just dumb. Sorry.
The backstory for the Jim Carrey one?
Yes, I think it's dumb. It didn't need to be that. It didn't need to be told. It didn't need to be there at all. Like it's just dumb.
This is kind of what I was talking about, though. That this is up to acting, though. I feel like the child actor that played the Grinch, it wasn't a child, he was 18. The kid, guy that played the young Grinch, and he died 2 years later. But he
was a poltergeist.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was so good. And so
I'm not saying the acting was bad. I don't like the writing and the story part of it.
That's how I figured out that actor wasn't a kid. I was like, too good, way too good, too much control of your face. So I Googled it and I was like, oh yeah, that really short guy from Passions. That was like that kind of viral soap opera that was on NBC for a while, where it was basically like Days of Our Lives, but if you were on meth. Like, it was nuts. But yeah, the love story and the backstory, that is just padding, and it's so obvious padding that it takes you out of the movie.
Yeah,
I think so. I think so.
That was my problem too.
I like that. I like that backstory. I feel like the padding in the Jim Carrey one was way better than the padding in the Grinch, where it was just like fluffy crap. Like there was the story, just I don't know. I just feel like the extra stuff they added
and less egregious. So I think, and the movie is 20 minutes shorter, so it's like, it feels better. I don't think you have to explain everything. You don't have to give the Grinch a fucking complicated backstory. He's a green monster who lives in a mountain, and his dog is his slave, and once a year he comes down to terrorize the people of Whoville. Just like, that's good enough. I mean, that's basically a horror movie, what I just described.
It is. Yeah, and it is really, Hollywood taking a beloved children's story and trying to stretch it out into something else. And I did not appreciate the additions to either of the two movies. Like Kyle was just saying, I felt like it was unnecessary. And the writing on the additions didn't feel like, I have mixed feelings on the whole thing about, like, it didn't feel like Dr. Seuss. You feel like if you're going to have these additions and you're going to have this extra content and this extra dialogue, you're going to make it feel like Dr. Seuss. But they would, and they couldn't decide what kind of movie they were going to be. Was it a musical? Was it, was it poetry? What was it? Because sometimes they would just go into regular dialogue and regular action, and then all of a sudden it would get kind of rhymey, like Dr. Seuss. And I just feel like they tried to take this really simple, compact story and stretch it out into an hour and a half or more, and they just didn't need to do it, and they didn't do it very successfully. I felt like the writing was the new stuff, the stuff that wasn't Dr. Seuss, wasn't very well written. It just didn't have the same feel. It just wasn't necessary, and I didn't appreciate it. We don't need it. We just didn't need it.
In the Grinch, the only Dr. Seussian style of I guess spokenness is the narrator, because everything else is pretty much normal, right? But I mean, my point is that was the only bit of writing that they kept Dr. Seussian style. And How the Grinch Stole Christmas, they tried in places, but then I don't think they did well.
You know what it reminds me of? It's something we complain about it a lot, is when things do fan service. When they're like, hey, remember that original? It rhymed and had whizzle wazzles and zoopy zaps and all that shit. So every once in a while they sprinkle it in so people go, oh yeah, this is a Grinch movie. I know the Grinch. Yeah. I like the Grinch, and I hate that. That is cheap as hell. And one reason I like the Grinch better, sorry to spoil it, is that it doesn't do that. It is like, we're making this movie about this character, but we're not going to do all this fan service stuff. We're just going to tell the story of the Grinch.
And there's even a part where Jim Carrey goes, and now I'm rhyming.
Oh, God,
Whatever.
Yeah, when they break the fourth wall.
Yeah. It's kind of like,
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I don't think... And I don't know we want to like credit Jim Carrey. I can't believe he wasn't listed as a writer on this, because I know.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Most of his stuff. Was a lot of it was on there. But I enjoyed that. I just feel so. I want to real quick just talk about the turn. I mean, that's the heart of these movies, right? Is that the Grinch is a dick, and then he discovers the joy of Christmas.
Really coming down on the Grinch in this episode.
He's a dick. He's a dick. He's a green dick. So I think green hairy dick. I feel like
what rhymes with that?
I feel like the turn and the turn is more believable in the Jim Carrey Grinch than it is in the animated one. I think I just don't think enough happens in the animated one for him to turn like that,
Yeah, there's a lot less room to cover too, because the Grinch animated version of the Grinch is a much nicer Grinch from the start.
Yeah,
right.
But the Grinch cartoon itself, though, the turn there's not it's pretty much like he hears him singing. He's like, oh, I guess they all actually still are cool, and I'm gonna go back and deliver all their shit. Like even the cartoon doesn't have a strong, like, this is a pivotal moment, and the Grinch at least does that. Whereas How the Grinch Stole Christmas, it's based on a lot of other things. It's based on his background, which we've established. They've changed a bunch of the stuff to make that moment, where the original it's a simple thing.
Yeah,
it's basic. And so
that is the problem when you complicate these things.
Yes.
is the things you add feel like additions, like they stand out. And also, if you're a Grinch and you shave, it doesn't do anything, because I didn't notice. They were all making fun of him because he was hairy. Then he went home and shaved, and the only thing he had was toilet paper on his face. I was like, he looks exactly the same. Did he just cut parts of his skin off? Like, what is this twisted movie trying to tell me?
Look at that hack job.
See,
I know,
but I thought, look, and here's the thing. I thought that the way they did it, because, he has a paper bag on his head, and the whole time in the audience, we're sitting there thinking, we're like, wow, it must be pretty bad. And then it takes it off, and you're like, it's not that bad. And that's what middle school embarrassments are like, where you're like, oh God, this is awful. I'm going to have to kill myself. And on the face of it, it's not that big a deal. It's not that bad. Right. Just that kids are dicks too. And so that's, I was like, wow, they handled that really well. That he didn't just completely disfigure himself. It's just middle schoolers being middle schoolers. And so I got to credit the Jim Carrey one for putting the backstory in there and staying true to like actually what that environment is like for kids.
And I would say to those moments, they did a nice job of selling that part of the story. I just don't think it was needed. That's the thing.
All right.
I'm not saying they didn't do a good job of that, because they did.
All right. Time's up, boys.
Oh, wow.
So soon?
They're being that,
Crack the whip.
Kyle.
I'm going to vote for the animated Grinch.
Okay. Andrew.
The Grinch.
Gabe.
I think the Grinch, because it had a little bit better emotional core to it.
All right. And Tom.
Dr. Seuss is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, because the turn was more believable.
All right.
And Dr. Seuss's name is in the title.
It's in the title of both.
Shut up, Andrew.
Audrey Geisel, Dr. Seuss's widow, had veto power over the final script for How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She objected to several elements, notably jokes aimed at mature audiences. She also objected to the inclusion of a Who family with no Christmas decorations, known as the Who-Steins, the implication being that the family was Jewish, as well as a stuffed trophy head of the Cat in the Hat being included in the Grinch's lair.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that.
That would have been great.
So they were Who-ish?
They were Who-ish.
Yeah. Fucking goddamn, Tom. You could tour for a year on that joke. Just around Christmas. Just in synagogues. But it's pretty funny.
I think there's a sequel right there, How the Grinch Stole Hanukkah.
Oh my God.
Actually, ever since
I'm just gonna mute myself the rest of the time. All we need is Tom.
Yeah, just Tom, do a tight 40 minutes.
There's one noticeable element common to How the Grinch Stole Christmas 66, How the Grinch Stole Christmas 2000, and The Grinch 2018, the song Welcome Christmas, written by Dr. Seuss and Albert Haig, and sung by the residents of Whoville. Tom, you bring that up, but Jim Carrey, for some reason, Google thinks I care about this, probably because I was looking for trivia, has stated that he would be open to doing a sequel to the movie. And I'm like,
that just came out like the last day.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like,
and Mask 2 as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They did a Mask 2. Jamie Kennedy's gonna see you in court.
Yeah, son of the mask.
That's right.
All right.
That's my mask.
I don't think Jim Carrey's counting that.
My mask.
Jim
is from
Carrey's
the 80s.
not my mask. Oh, you're the Eric Stoltz?
Yeah,
Let's have a
Eric
mask.
Stoltz.
Eric
versus-
Stoltz mask.
Let's do the Mask versus the Mask.
That
versus
movie
Son of
is
Mask.
hilarious.
Okay. I think you might have a brain problem.
The man, you got to have the man in the iron mask in there so that we could have 3 masks.
Jesus Christ. It's getting convoluted.
and the Mask of Zorro. And
is there anybody still listening?
Nope.
no, they're gone.
Oh my God.
They actually stopped listening once Tom told that joke. They said, "This is the best it's going to get
That's
tonight."
the hype. Yeah, absolutely. If you look at our listenership, that's the hype.
All right, let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
Oh, that's me, isn't it, too? Well, golly, there's quite a few famous people in both of these movies. So, let's start with The Grinch, because I think there's going to be a little bit more talk in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So, in The Grinch, you have Benedict Cumberbatch, which fantastic. Pharrell Williams, Rashida Jones, Kenan Thompson, just to, start. Angela Lansbury is in it. And all do, some very specific characters. And, we've talked about this before where people are like, oh, well, they're just a voice, so are they really acting? But there is skill in not only being able to do the lines, but you have to make them like you are actually on screen as your component digital character is actually doing the physicalness of it. But you still have to have a vocal physicalness to it, if that makes sense. And so, Benedict Cumberbatch, God, he does a lot of great stuff. He's funny. He's very draw in this, very traditional, just kind of, but quick-witted. I enjoy listening to him. He could read books and I would listen. Pharrell Williams as the narrator was a wonderful, wonderful choice. I think it worked out. And honestly, out of everybody in the whole group, I thought Mr. Bricklebaum, Kenan Thompson's character, was probably my favorite. He is hilarious and just makes me chuckle every single time. And you could tell he was just having a blast with it. And that, to me, like, it really showed through in his acting. So let's jump over to How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Obviously, Jim Carrey, Christina Baranski, Jeffrey Tambor, Molly Shannon. We already talked about Josh Ryan Evans, which I did not know that he had passed after the movie. So that was kind of new. Bill Irwin, Jeremy Howard. These are all really good actors, but I got you. You think of Jim Carrey and a lot of the other films that he has done. He's a very physical actor, facially, body-wise. He's quick. He's goofy. He sometimes is over the top. Sometimes he's in between. He just has this craziness to him, and it works really well with the way that he portrayed the Grinch. He has that weird facialness, the goofiness, the grittiness, and he just kind of goes back and forth from being goofy to not quite being evil, but more sarcastic and dry. Because, like, even when he wants to do something bad, for instance, when he's like in the mailroom, like, he wants to be bad, but he ends up just rapping Cindy Lou Who instead of actually like doing something actually evil. But regardless of all of that, I have to give Jim Carrey, and I don't want to spoil any trivia of Mike has any, but there is some really fascinating stuff of the gruelingness that Jim Carrey had to go through to be able to play the Grinch, just with the costuming and everything else that he did. And I think he, for just that and what he did, he knocked that out of the park. And I got to give him probably the most, stars for the evening, because I feel really bad for him. And, got to give a little shout out to Kelly, the female dog that played Max.
If you look at the billing of on IMDb, I think Kelly is like third billed, the dog.
She is.
Yeah. It's funny because in this category, sometimes I get lost on. So I want to give actors credit for taking swings and trying very hard, trying new things, different things, but then also have to judge whether or not I think it was successful. And sometimes I think when you have an actor like Jim Carrey, who's so big and physical and broad, but also so specific in that he very much patterned a style that a lot of people have tried to emulate. It's like his thing. I want to give him credit for that, but I found it to be very over the top and sort of buffoonish at times. And I didn't think the other actors in the live action Grinch were really giving great performances. There's an interesting list of names in that. Ron Howard got everybody on his side of the family tree in that damn movie. If you look at the cast and credits, there's like 40 people named Howard. Clint Howard's in the movie. I saw Clint Howard at a convention recently, and he's looking rough.
Little Bobby John Howard.
Yeah, but man, I don't know, because I want to give movies credits for taking swings and trying new things, and I want to give actors credit for going out on a limb. But Jim Carrey's kind of past that. He's done it for so long, and this just was like cartoonish to the nth degree at times. I will give him huge props for dealing with the makeup and costume that he had to. It had to be miserable. The fact that he can put on any sort of immersive acting where you're like interested at all in the character is an achievement. I hate when Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't speak like a British person. It bothers me. So Doctor Strange,
or like when he doesn't talk like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, be Bumbledick Cumbersnatch. I love that guy. I don't like when he does American accents, and I think he's one of the worst British actors who does them. And I did not like that voice. Keenan, okay, I like Keenan Thompson. I almost called him Keenan Allen playing fantasy football. But I feel like he has a few go-to voices and characters that he does a lot, and this was very much one of them. Doesn't mean he wasn't funny. I mean, he was good. But the acting, I think, in the live-action Grinch struggles from the prosthetics that I think they just put on average. I mean, stop doing the Who makeup. Not everyone in your town has to look like Goofy. It doesn't make any sense at this point. They didn't do it in the Grinch. Like, people looked normal in they weren't Whovians, you know. They just look like normal animated people. But they went all in on the live action, and it's distracting. People have like giant, you know, fupas under their nose. It's like weird. They look like mice people. I don't like it.
But not throughout the whole thing, because like as some of the kids, they weren't completely Hoovy at all.
Oh yeah, Cindy Lou didn't have that.
And then Cindy Lou didn't have any of it, and it was really
and they had to bring
choice.
Well, they had to bring attention to it, so you understood that it was a weird choice.
Like, Hubert is a puberty thing, right?
Strange.
Yeah. Like her nose, she hasn't grown in. Her nose hasn't grown in yet.
Yeah. Well, so say your balls dropping, your upper lip puffs.
Yeah.
So
okay.
And they never, you know, if they're so good on explaining things, why was the Grinch green?
Well, you know, that's something we can talk about. I think that's something we should talk about in overall.
Okay.
You know, how does the Grinch compare? You know, is the Grinch actually a Who, or is he a different species, or a different
It depends
race,
on which movie.
Or which story? You know, like, well, what is the Grinch? I think maybe we can get into that. And
if you're gonna posit some sort of Whovian evolution, you need to find a missing link.
Right.
Somewhere.
What is the common ancestor between Who's and Grinches?
Somewhere.
And is there only one Grinch? You know, I think there's a lot of. Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. Maybe the Grinch is, some sort of experiment, some sort of. Yeah.
So somewhere in between.
No kidding.
In between on the family tree, there's like a teal creature who looks like they have like a couple zins.
What are
in
we
their
doing? Oh my god!
And that's halfway between a Hoovie and a Grinch.
We gotta save this for the final round.
We're on acting.
Thank you, Andrew.
I think
I like the dog.
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, they're both good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, here's one thing I will say about acting, though. And when you do an animated movie, I know there's time and budget constraints, but you have like unlimited takes to get it right. You don't have to get in makeup. You don't have to do this and that. You know, there's a lot less constraints. So if your acting is bad, in an animated movie, to me, it feels worse and lazier than in a live action movie. Cause I'm like, look, you're pressed for a lot of this stuff. And I'm not saying it's like easy to do an animated film, but you theoretically have way more time to get the inflection right, get the timing right, because, you know, you're much less constrained by other things like costume and all the cast and crew that need to be on set with you. So, yeah.
I mean, there are some other challenges, though. I mean, the fact that a lot of them aren't in the room together, like you have to act against a recording, which, so, I mean, I think there's some trade-off there.
And time, you're paying this person for 3 weeks of work, and they have 3 weeks in their schedule, and that's it. So sometimes it does get rushed, because I've worked for 12 hours doing the same lines over and over and over again. I need a break. We have 6 days left of me in the studio. You know, sometimes you just have to move on. So I would assume, all I'm getting at is, I would assume it's similar to shooting an actor on set where, you know, you're at the end of the day, you got to get your shot. You've done like 7 takes. They're not all super funny, but it'll probably be all right, and you'll edit it together, and that actor did the best they could, and we got to move on. I would feel that it would be a similar, and maybe we're getting more into directing, but I would think the actors have that same kind of constraints for time, at least on that side of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think Tom made a good point too. There are trade-offs that, you know, you don't get to act on a set. You don't get the full movie experience. Sometimes it's you alone just standing there. Now, have we not talked about Anthony Hopkins as the narrator in the live action? I thought he was great. Speaking of,
he was great. Yeah,
I listened to read books. You know, like
and
love to listen.
I watched
Pharrell Williams' flow was just beautiful, though.
Yeah,
I did not like
smooth.
Really?
I
Pharrell Williams was
weak. Okay.
He was weak. He didn't have a good voice. I did not like Pharrell Williams.
I didn't think he had any gravitas.
No. And then I heard Anthony Hopkins. I'm like, this is the voice that you need for a narrator. Pharrell Williams was... He didn't have any inflection. He was flat. He was weak.
You want the voice from the cartoon. That's what you really want.
Well, kind of. I want a good voice.
Thurl Ravenscroft.
Speaking of voices, you know, speaking of voices, Cumberbatch, Thunder Punch. Benedict Cumberbatch.
We are very sorry.
You've got a guy with that voice. And you have him do some like weak, high, unrecognizable. When I realized it was him, I'm like, that doesn't sound like him at all.
I don't
see. And I think the Grinch. I think the Grinch should have that kind kind of menacing kind of voice to
why
it.
Couldn't he have had a British voice? Why couldn't he have?
Yeah, he could have just.
He could have. He could have.
Matter.
I don't mind if it's British or not, but it wasn't like this kind of imposing, threatening. It wasn't Benedict Cumberbatch, and I feel like it was weak, just like Pharrell Williams.
No, and I think it was a you know, they talked about this somewhere for hours and hours and hours about the Grinch's voice, and I don't know. I thought Benedict's choice for the voice was refreshing, and it was one of the few things I liked about the animated one.
I didn't like it. I just felt like the Grinch should have a deeper. And speaking of voices, you know, Jim Carrey's choice of voice for the Grinch was also kind of weird. It felt like he was like channeling some other people. They said one said that he was trying to be kind of Sean Connery, and it was kind of in there. And geez, now it's not coming to me. I hate it, but I have trouble with names sometimes. Never mind. But anyway, I felt like he was channeling other people's voices, and I'm not sure I liked his choice of voice either. And if you're going to cast Jim Carrey in a movie, please do not cover up his face. Do not cover his face.
Are we serious? I don't want it.
It's an important part of his acting ability. You go and you do the mask and you make his face CG. It's like, you don't need CG for Jim Carrey.
That wasn't CG.
There's a lot of CG.
There's a lot of CG, but the mask
There was
that
a
he
lot of
wears
CG
most
in
of the
the
time is not CG.
Right. Yeah, that's
But
all.
you
Rick
covered
Baker.
his face. You covered his face. You covered his face in makeup in The Grinch. Do not cover Jim Carrey's face.
I'm saving.
Do not
I
do
will.
it.
We'll talk
Do
makeup
not
and
do
directing. I'm not getting into it right now. So
Don't do it.
I
Huh?
thought they did a nice job with the makeup to be able to allow.
I'll
him
get
to
into makeup
emote.
when we get into directing. I'm not getting into it right now.
I mean,
think-
I love a lot of the other touches, the stuff like with the fur on his fingers and that kind of stuff. But it's Jim Carrey. If you're going to have him do this character, don't cover his face. Don't do it.
Don't cover his face.
Don't cover his face.
Gabe has spoken.
So
That's a new shirt right there.
Don't cover his face.
Seriously. Like every time they do that, it's like, this is not Jim Carrey. This is not a...
Okay.
You're taking away one of his most important aspects in his facial expression.
Gabe, save it for directing because you're going to be up next.
I told you I was going to be Grinchy tonight because I don't have much nice to say in directing either.
Oh, no. Hey, can I tell my awful?
No, God, they talked the rounds over, and I didn't get to say anything.
Rounds over, Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
I feel like the Jim Carrey one, they leaned heavily on Jim Carrey to deliver it, and I feel like the best parts of those movies are when it's just him ad-libbing and being Jim Carrey. It like took me back to like, what the fuck's happening on the screen? Like took me back to like Ace Ventura and the early Jim Carrey stuff that I really liked, and that's what I loved about it is that they let him do that. There were some directing choices that were not great, but we'll get into. I do think that Maya Rudolph and Rashida Jones need to take a year or two off and let some other actresses play the moms, because I feel like every animated mom, it's like, do we get Rashida or do we get Maya? I don't know which one's available. So, and then I like Benedict Cumberbatch's voice on the animated one. I think it was a bold choice to go with it, and it was unpredictable and. Yeah, so I disagree with everything Gabe has said in the last 15 minutes.
Yes, because I disagree with everything you just said. Awful choice. Benedict Cumberbatch with a great voice, and he goes this kind of milquetoast, wimpy kind of voice.
I think it showed some range. I think if it'd done closer to his voice,
but that range might have been better for a different character than the Grinch.
All right.
Yeah. So anyways, I was in New York City and, Pharrell Williams is like known to like weird hats. And I literally saw him come out of an alleyway with a woman and a security guard and go into a haberdashery, which is a fancy hat store. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. I just saw the guy who's known for weird hats go into a weird hat store. That is one of the craziest celebrity sightings I've ever had.
Did it blow your hat off?
No, but he was wearing a fucking funny hat when he went in. He wore a weird giant tan hat into a hat store.
And so it was like, maybe he was looking for, was he really trying to upgrade, do you think? Or just,
I don't know.
He was having some technical issues with the existing hat.
This is a 100% true story. I swear on Kevin Smith's original films that I loved. I was in New York City with a friend of mine, and we were walking down the street, and across the street, I noticed the store because it was called a haberdashery. And I was like, that's fucking weird. And then out of the alley came Pharrell Williams, a woman, and a big security guard so they could shop alone at this haberdashery. And he was wearing like an oversized, weird looking tan hat. And this was around the time he had gotten engaged or something like that. And there was stuff in the news about him and his weird hats. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. I can't believe I'm seeing this. So yes, that's a true story.
I feel like someone's like, all right, if you can say haberdashery 5 times in the podcast, I'll give you $20.
Yes, this is my Danny Boyle. I'm a sneak haberdashery to everyone.
My Blade Runner.
Yes.
It's a good thing he didn't go to the mustachery then.
I know. I've seen Tom Selleck.
All right, Andrew. Andrew.
Oh my God.
Vote.
I'm giving it to Jim Carrey for How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
All right. Gabe.
This is one where I wish I could vote for none of them. I do not like the performances in either of these movies overall. The dogs, I'll give it to the dogs. I liked the dog in The Grinch. I thought, and that probably goes into other categories as far as directing and such. But The Grinch.
That was not a real dog. Just
Tom.
So you know.
I know, but they got it right. They got
How
it
the
right.
Grinch Stole Christmas.
And Kyle.
I'm gonna give it to the Grinch because it annoyed me less.
Full of holiday cheer. The studio originally wanted Benedict Cumberbatch to voice the Grinch using his natural voice, but Cumberbatch felt that since the rest of the cast is American, the Grinch should have an American accent.
And I'm just gonna go with Gabe and say Benedict Cumberbatch was wrong.
Audrey?
I don't care about the accent. It just was the pitch.
Audrey,
Do you
guess.
think?
We've opened a new disagreement.
Do you think moviegoers would have been open to a British person playing the villain?
Oh, I don't think it would work. I don't think it
American
would work.
moviegoers. Do
Yeah,
you
the
think they'd
British
be okay
are
with it?
villains.
No, I don't think they would have liked
There
it.
are original villains.
That was a Star Wars joke. But
Yes.
all right, carry
And
on.
I was trying to carry you through it, but Gabe
Please
just
cut that out. That sucked.
Audrey Geisel came to the set of Man on the Moon to see if Jim Carrey was right to play the Grinch. He was so deep into the character of Andy Kaufman, however, he had to essentially do an impression of himself doing an impression of the Grinch.
Oh, God.
And that was what got him the gig.
That's
See, you didn't talk about the trivia that I thought you were going to talk about, Mike.
Nope. Actually, I do have that later on.
Okay, all right.
I think. We'll see.
If not, we will talk about it in overall because he deserves a star for that too.
All right. Third round, directing.
Well, let's start with Ron Howard. I want to like Ron Howard. I want Ron Howard to be a good director. He's a good director, but he's not a great director. He's not. Everything I've watched of Ron Howard's has been good, but not great. And this was him trying to pretend to be someone else. This was not. He was doing. It just didn't seem original, and I didn't like all the shots that were all kind of akimbo and constantly moving, and I think in certain scenes it makes sense for it to be kind of frenetic. And I know you're making a children's film, and that you need to keep it entertaining, you need to keep it moving, but the shot choices were disturbing to me. It was always off kilter and always in motion, and it just didn't really. I just didn't like it, and I think Kyle mentioned it before. It was in some ways it was kind of dark, and I don't know if I hate that so much when it comes to the Grinch, because the Grinch is a dark character to a certain degree. He hates Christmas, and so I don't know if I hate that entirely. I thought it's different. It's really interesting to kind of compare a live action film with an animated film and directing styles, and because as we talked about before with acting and animation, those kinds of things, it's a little different when you're doing an animated film. You kind of have more redos than you might normally get, but you do have to consider that if you have unlimited redos and this is what you choose, this is what you chose. This is a directorial choice, probably in most cases. I suppose there's exceptions to that. I think one of the things I did like about the Grinch and the directing in that is that it was. I liked the shot choices. I liked the angles. And again, it's hard to talk about these things in animation because it's all kind of artificial, but there's still choices happening there, and I like the choices and the angles. And I don't know if do we talk about animation and the animation style here because it's kind of like cinematography, or do we save that for the next round? I don't know.
Go ahead and talk about it.
Because I really the animation. I felt like some of the story was weak, some of the performances were weak, but the animation was just fantastic. The attention to detail. There's a close up of the Grinch, where you just see all the hairs and you see the reflection in his eyes. And Tom disagrees with me in the animation, apparently. But Tom has been wrong in previous rounds as well. So we'll just let him be wrong in this round too. The animation was really that's what stood out in the Grinch to me. I thought the performance was weak. I didn't like Benedict's voice. There were all kinds of things that made me want to turn the movie off, but I enjoyed the animation. And I think that was probably a directorial choice. I mean, it kind of looks a lot like, it's that studio. It looks a lot. Some of the characters kind of look like minions. They all kind of look like.
Is it?
They all kind of look like the other one. Yes, it's Illumination.
It's Illumination.
Illumination.
You could make an argument there that they're kind of. They all look the same, but you can make that exact same argument about Pixar. You could make that same argument about DreamWorks. You can make that exact same argument about any of these studios because they have their go-to stuff. They have their animators. They have their stuff that they already have that they can reuse. But I thought the animation was really well done, and it was a highlight in the film for me. I just didn't like Ron Howard trying to be somebody else. It didn't feel like Ron Howard to me. He was, I didn't like it.
So I'm confused because you said he's not a good director in general, but then
I've wanted to like his stuff.
But like Apollo 13.
Apollo 13 is good.
Is amazing. Like Far and Away is really good.
Far and Away is
13,
okay.
13 Days is really good. Anyway, I just
what's the one, the racing one with
Rush is amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I did not like Solo. Do not go there. I did not like Solo. I thought he ruined that movie.
Well, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
I think the animation is what probably bothered me the most because I felt like I was just watching. Hey, can we do a Despicable Me movie? It just feels like a Despicable Me movie without minions.
It does.
And they just have Grinch playing through.
I'll give you that.
And it drove me nuts. I'm just like, I feel like they shoehorned it in there, and the whole thing just felt like even his lair just kind of all felt like they just pulled it from Despicable Me, and there was a lot of laziness there. And I just, if I had a problem with the Grinch, I do feel there were some some kooky shots and like whip pans and stuff that I didn't really care for. I wasn't a huge fan of the fourth wall break stuff, but it kind of was, I guess necessary for Jim Carrey. But I just like I said in the writing room, I just felt like Grinch was just the extra stuff they added. It just didn't add to the story at all. It was just extra stuff. But I like the extra stuff they added in the Grinch or How the Grinch Stole Christmas because it was it added to the story. But animation absolutely just drove me nuts. It just felt just repeated.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Jump in. I don't care. All I was gonna say is the animation studios. They after years and years and years, they will hone in their styles, and I would agree that at times it felt very much like it was Despicable Me in the world of Despicable Me. And I'm not sure if that was just laziness or if it was actually like, we need to churn this out quickly. And they just wanted to get it out. And so they took shortcuts, which happens a lot. But I would agree that it had some of that sensation of Despicable Me, which are fantastic films and what they're known for. And I don't know if they were maybe even just trying to be on a little bit on that coattails. I don't know.
Of course they were.
Yeah,
but the Minions Illumination things in the open.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
And just to be clear, the look of the film, that bothered me. But the story just felt like, it's a Groot Christmas. Like it just, even that was like,
I agree,
copied over.
To your point, though, Gabe, when we talk about an animated film, you know, I realize that there's not going to be a huge crew that goes onto a giant set and you have actors stand and you put a camera and you film and you do multiple takes. However, you do all of the same things that a director would do. You do storyboards. There is set designers. They just are designing in a digital world. There is someone that's literally doing cinematography and they're moving the camera where they want it to make sure the actors are in place. And like all of the same things happen. They just happen in a different environment. So just so you know that that director is still directing the movie because they are still doing all those things. They just do it in a digital world instead of in a real world, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Of course. Yeah,
But
and I understand that.
by the
Definitely.
virtue of having it in a digital world, you also have a lot more control over that.
You have control, but you
Yeah.
have the same problems of mistakes. You have the same problem of sometimes it's a perfect shot until they render it and then something gets screwed up and they have to spend another 20 hours rendering that sequence. Or an actor says something that they weren't expecting and now they have to reanimate that. Or now you have to hide it with ADR. Like, it is almost an identical process. It's just a different medium.
I think you remove some of the variables, though, that you would have.
It is
shooting
more
live.
controlled.
Yeah.
But
I
if you
think
were on a
that's the-
soundstage, but what if you're on a soundstage? You control that completely.
Mm,
You are controlling the lighting. You are controlling what the sets look like. You are controlling everything about it when you're on a soundstage versus
Right.
if I go
You're-
outside.
You're
Right?
removing one thing, though, from the equation, and that is how the actors look.
Sure.
You don't have to worry about that. And in a
Yep.
visual medium, I think that is a lot of the time and effort. You don't have to worry about that as much.
You have other problems that you have to worry
Oh,
about
it comes with
digitally.
unique problems.
Yeah,
right?
it's both sides. But yeah,
I think I'm kind of with Gabe on the Ron Howard train. I want to like Ron Howard. I still think my favorite things Ron Howard ever did was be the kid in Andy Griffith and the narrator in Arrested Development. I wouldn't, other than the movies of his that I remember not liking, I don't think I can name a lot of Ron Howard films. I know he does a lot, but the movie was shot. The weird sensibility. It's very dark and grimy. The color choices are very muted. One of the things I love about the original Grinch is that it is, sort of a dark story. Not that there's like a lot of violence. It's just a guy who hates a thing that nobody thinks you should hate. But it's also very bright and colorful, and the animation is very bold and stands out. And I think that's a nice thing that offsets it, and it looks good. And I like the animation in the Grinch. I think I am more immune to the sameness of animated movies because I don't have kids. So I don't see all the animated movies and I don't see the trends or whatever. I watch very few animated movies. But yes, I think what we talked about earlier, not only is it a thing where you have maybe certain artists, but also now you're known for that look, and that look triggers something in a child's mind when they see the poster, and the parents' mind, they go, oh, I like movies that look like this, right? So it's like a subconscious thing where it's, you could do it any way you want. And animated movies have become so varied in the way they have been animated. But the sameness is like what we're talking about with name recognition and all the remakes people make. It's just another layer you can bake in subconsciously that draw people's eyes and attention to your product. Your movie looks like Despicable Me. I like Despicable Me. Therefore, I will probably like your movie. That's easier, right? And also you have experience doing it. But I will say that I don't think it's the greatest animated movie. It's not groundbreaking in any way. I think it is colorful. It's bright. I think it's, I like the animation in it. But I don't think it's, leaps and bounds or like, breaking any new barriers. But there's a strikingness to the darkness and the shot choices and some of the performances they chose to keep, and some of the things in How the Grinch Stole Christmas that I thought was just sort of odd.
I could, by the way, say the exact same thing about Michael Bay. You want to talk about directors? Throw Michael Bay out there. No, and the reason.
Careful.
No. The reason I bring that up is because you talked about
getting the stare.
There
Mike's
are
staring at you.
I know there are animation, things that make this look similar to this. So then subconsciously, Michael Bay has a filming style.
Oh yeah,
he has a way that he shoots his action movies. Jon Favreau has a very specific way that he shoots fighting scenes, and it is really obvious when he has shot it. There are just some of those directors that have a physical style to them that I don't care what movie they make, I can be like, yeah, that was Michael Bay. And it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just they become a style. And I think that the animation studios, sometimes it can be bad for them, but they run into similar pitfalls. They reuse assets, or they have a group of animators that animate, humans in the exact same way. Pixar does it. DreamWorks does it. Illumination does it. They all do it. And it's hard to get away from it, especially when you have these animators that can kick this stuff out, and they're going to be with you for 20 years.
Yeah, it's a financial incentive.
I'm not saying that's bad.
I never watched Up or Finding Nemo or WALL-E and felt like I was watching Toy Story. I didn't feel like it was just like they just pasted over a Toy Story story with the look. And I feel like WALL-E and Coco and Finding Nemo, they each have their own very. Yep. I mean, Pixar puts a lot of time in giving each of their films a distinct look. And there's a little bit of that Pixar sheen to it, but I don't think it's nearly as. I can't think of anything that's as egregious as what Illumination does.
Their people in Pixar movies, human beings, look very similar. Their style is very similar in all their movies. I can pick out a Pixar movie based on the humans.
That's interesting you say that, because I think that is one of the things that I would say is like the human part of the stories of Pixar's, but they do a very good job varying up what their toys or main characters or the, Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
And again, I would say that Grinch was riding coattails of Despicable Me, versus trying to ride out Ice Age, because Ice Age, the animation style was dramatically different, and the guy that started Illumination came from 20th century where they did Ice Age, and it's totally different. And so they have, I would say that around the time that it did, they're already on that kick. There are, because look at like the Penguins or Madagascar and the Penguins and stuff. Not a Despicable Me movie.
All right. That's the end of the round.
Like that stopped us tonight at all.
That's true. I have a few observations. Gabe brought a gun to a podcast. Tom,
told you I was going to be Grinchy.
You mentioned that Ron Howard did 13 days. I think you were thinking of 13 Lives.
13 Lives, thank you.
Yeah, 13
he
days.
He didn't do 13 Ghosts?
He did not do 13 Ghosts either.
With Tony Shalhoub?
Yeah.
Just real quick, I want to point out some of Ron Howard's movies.
And actually, while you do this, Gabe, can you say whether you liked him or didn't like him?
Yeah.
Go. Speed round.
Splash, Cocoon, Gung Ho, Willow, Parenthood, Backdraft, Far and Away.
I can't go that fast.
Apollo 13, Ransom, Ed TV, A Beautiful Mind.
See?
The Missing.
A Beautiful Mind is pretty good.
Missing sucks. Cinderella Man is awesome. Da Vinci Code, Frost Nixon, Angels and Demons. The Dilemma.
Some of them I haven't seen.
Rush. In the Heart of the Sea. There's Breakthrough, which was a TV series. The Beatles, 8 Days a Week. The Touring Years. Let's see. Inferno. Genius. Solo, which you've already stated. Pavarotti. Hillbilly Eulogy. Sorry. We Feed People, 13 Lives, Jim Henson, Idea Man, and then his latest.
Well, that I haven't seen yet, but I want to see.
Yeah.
There's Eden, but
don't forget the other thing that he made. Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh yes.
I mean that. I enjoy things that Ron Howard makes. That would be one of them.
Dude,
but I still have a problem with that. Is the way he names them is disturbing.
He names
You've
them
heard
after the
stories
places where
they were conceived.
They were conceived. Yeah.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
That's the story he's saying.
Well, yeah,
That's like Blossom in the 80s when her friend Six was named after how many beers it took before her dad would conceive.
Right. Yeah.
How do you know that?
It was in an
I
episode.
watched Blossom, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was gonna save this, but I did want to let you guys know that I've reconnected with my long lost child, Dearborn Econo Lodge. And I found out that she was a twin with Battle Creek World War II Museum. But we'll meet around the holidays.
Well, great. They could come over and play with my little guy, Burger King bathroom.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Are you that fucking
Joe's
guy
bathroom.
from the Humpty Dance?
What's the likelihood we're going to name our kids the same thing?
Yeah.
Producer and director Ron Howard was so thankful for Jim Carrey putting up. Oh, wait, we didn't vote. Shit. All right, let's put it to a vote. Gabe.
I did not like Ron Howard trying to be Tim Burton, so I'm going to go with The Grinch.
Fair enough. Tom.
Jim Carrey. Grinch.
I believe that is a spite vote. Kyle.
This is directing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Scott Mosier. Give it to Scott Mosier, The Grinch.
All right.
He did Clerks. He was in Clerks.
Andrew.
The Grinch.
All right. Now we can move
Now
on
we're
to
on
trivia.
to trivia. Okay. Yeah.
Producer and director Ron Howard was so thankful for Jim Carrey putting up with the uncomfortable hours to apply his makeup that during filming he put on the Grinch suit with full makeup and directed one day with the suit on. He intended this to be a show of appreciation to Carrey. However, when Carrey saw Howard in full Grinch outfit, he was angered, believing it was a stunt double who looked nothing like him. There's not much on the directing of The Grinch, but it is the feature film non-documentary directorial debut of Scott Mosier, whose previous directing credits were the short films Mayday, The Crumbling of a Documentary, and Eddie's Life Coach. He was also, as Kyle has said, a longtime producer of many of Kevin Smith's projects.
And you do have to say that Yarrow Cheney was also a part director in The Grinch, who did all of, you're never going to believe this, the Despicable Me movie.
Oh, wow. What do you think that was a stipulation Scott Mosier had to agree to get a directing gig?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, Scott Mosier played a very important character in the View Askewverse. He played Willem, a man who liked to be snowballed. So if you don't know what that is, kids, you didn't live through the 90s.
Look at it.
Open up incognito mode first.
And you also now know why my child is not named Hardy's Bathroom. Fourth and final round overall.
Well, I'm not sure there's much else that can be said about these movies, but we're going to try. I think they're taking a very short story, and it's like this with all of Dr. Seuss's books. We're going to take this book and extend it into a movie, and I would even say they get mixed results. I think they get so-so results. They consistently get so-so results out of it. I think Dr. Seuss is a book author, and it doesn't really translate over to film very easily. That being said, I feel like the Jim Carrey Grinch is probably the best live action Grinch you can get. I don't think there's a whole lot. If you were going to make a hour and a half, 2 hour movie about the Grinch in live action, I feel like this is about as good as you're going to get. If you cut some of the backstory, you're going to have to add something else to the story, and then that's going to feel superfluous. I will give credit. I know Gabe won't, but I'm going to give incredible credit to Rick Baker for his Jim Carrey's makeup. I think it was an incredibly huge challenge to make a live action Grinch, and Rick Baker is the best in the business. The guy has 7 Academy Awards, and he somehow was able to make.
I will not disagree with that, Tom.
Thank you. I felt like Rick Baker somehow was able to put him in a makeup that allowed Jim Carrey's facial features to transfer to the makeup and prosthetics in a way that I mean, at one point he's like dumping milk all over himself, and all I can imagine is the makeup people standing off to the side going, well, that's the last shot of the day. So I think there's a lot of credit to go there, because I think if somebody had come and said, hey, we're going to do a live action Grinch, people would be like, you can't do it. I mean, the Grinch is so inhuman looking that it's not possible. But somehow Rick Baker and Jim Carrey were able to work together and make it happen. And I was very entertained by it. On the other hand, I think I just go back to the whole, I felt like the Grinch was just another Despicable Me movie. I didn't find any of the stuff they added to be particularly engaging. The animation felt like it was kind of copied over from Despicable Me, but there was some decent voice acting in there. But I have pretty sizable problems with both these movies, and I don't know if I'll ever watch any of them ever again. But honestly, if people are like, hey, let's watch a Grinch, we're going to watch the Chuck Jones, right? Because I mean, you don't mess with perfection, because the Chuck Jones one is really just was it 22, 23 minutes? It's just, it's an animated book. The drawings are very true to the Dr. Seuss's drawings. And Chuck Jones he's a master of animated slapstick. And I mean, he did my favorite Tom and Jerry episodes. They scared me when I was a kid, but now they're my favorite. So yeah, that's pretty much.
You were scared of Tom and Jerry cartoons?
Chuck Jones ones. The Chuck Jones ones were weird, and whenever they came on, I was just like, the music was off, and now I recognize them as the works of art that they are. They're funny and they stand out, and they're they're unlike because the other one, the standard Tom and Jerry cartoons, felt just like ripping off Looney Tunes, whereas Chuck Jones and his Looney Tunes work and his Tom and Jerry stuff had this real unique feel to it. And it was unsettling, and I loved it. I love it now. I didn't love it when I was a kid.
Okay.
It's like little cinephile Tom sitting there going, is this a Chuck Jones one? I'm scared, Mom. I can't believe you noticed the difference. That's hilarious.
Oh yeah.
I would have been like, cat and mouse. That's funny. Can I have another bowl of cinnamon toast crunch?
Oh good. No, we were at Tom and Jerry Looney Tunes house. That was that was on all the time growing up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you made a great point at the beginning. And I think that is whenever you adapt something that is shorter and you're going to make it longer, you have to add something, and what you add is going to drastically alter the way the original intention of the art was created. And in one case, it's a love story, and in another case, it's softening the Grinch a bit and adding less padding and keeping a shorter movie, but just adding a little bit more heart and wackiness to it and morality, I guess. But yeah, this is a problem. And I think it got me thinking, is there a time during overall when you think, should you have made this movie? Because the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or The Grinch That Stole Christmas, or Who the Grinch Was That Stole Christmas, it exists and has existed for 60 years. So then you go, well, why did we do it again? And obviously there are lots of reasons. Money is number one. But then you go, but should you have done this? Should you just left well enough alone? We have one. It's great. It's nice and tidy. You can get a couple commercials in it. It fits great in you can stretch it to an hour on network TV. So like, there's no need for these movies. And I might start taking that into account when I think about how good they are. They're like, did you have to make this? You shouldn't have made this. But I think the padding is going to change very much. We see it a lot when you trim something down, you adapt a larger book into a movie. Almost everyone comes out saying the book was better. Well, yeah, it had 40 hours or whatever of your time, or 80 hours of your time to build a world and create much more. Cinemas of, much tighter, much more visual. You got to get in, get out, and don't lose people's attention. So it's kind of interesting. I might start thinking about, should this movie exist? And if it shouldn't exist, maybe I'll pretend it doesn't exist and I won't vote for it, and I'll just refuse to participate in the system. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. What could go wrong?
Take that, monkeys.
Yeah. I'm not
But
your
did you have to rent one?
I did. And that guy's got me over a barrel.
Yeah.
He knows where I live.
They still got your money.
Yeah.
So it did. There is a reason for it to exist, and it's the first one you mentioned. It got our money.
Right. It's so weird to think about these things that they're remaking now. You're talking 40, 50 years after the original, and you just shake your head and you go, why? And it's so kind of shameless, like hold their hands out, rattle their tin cups. It's like, come on, guys, like leave great art alone. Just leave it alone. Make new great art. But that's also very challenging and difficult and unsure and scary. And people who want a lot of money are risk averse sometimes in these endeavors, because a movie costs $100 million these days. And if you lose $100 million, don't care what company you are, that sucks. That gets people fired. That gets things shut down. That's bad. So we sort of, capitalism has created this monster. So somewhere out there is a socialist communist paradise full of great art, and I will find it. Guys, I'm moving to Scandinavia.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we were going to talk a little bit in this round about the Grinch and who is the Grinch. And
what is the Grinch?
What is the Grinch, and where does he come from? Now, you were just talking about how they had to take this short story and expand it to fill an hour and a half or more, and so they would have to create all this backstory type stuff. But the one thing that the backstory that they did not expound upon is the one I think we should talk about right now. Who is the Grinch? What is the Grinch? Is the Grinch a who? Is there more than one Grinch?
Gabe, when you brought this up, when you guys were talking about this, I went to the internet and
which knows
I found.
Hold on, let me move my bags.
Thank you. And I found some theories. If you want to hear them.
I'd love to. That's
all right.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
It's revealed in How the Grinch Stole Christmas that the titular green character is not originally from Whoville. The Jim Carrey adaptation shows that during his newborn travels, his cradle is knocked off course and he accidentally lands in a snowy city. His intended hometown has been debated throughout the years, with some believing he was meant to live in the flower civilization of Whoville from Horton Hears a Who. However, it is made clear that he's the only Grinch around. Because of this, it's fair to question whether the rest of the Grinch population went. Unfortunately, the theory targets this gray area, stating that the Grinch species was hunted as food source until they were wiped out. The most prominent piece of evidence to support this is the color. Green eggs and ham are in fact green. This is a significant characteristic of the Grinch species as well. It would make sense that the Grinch is green inside and out, thus producing proteins of the same color. Considering only one Grinch is left in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, green eggs and ham would be a scarce meal. That would make it a delicacy in the I Am culture, which is depicted throughout the story. Another part of the theory suggests that Sam I Am is actually a who. This is mainly because the illustrations throughout both How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Green Eggs and Ham, they are distinct visual similarities between the Who and I Am species, including the upturned and pointy noses. If the species are one and the same, there's more behind the Grinch's disdain for others. Avoiding the Who's would certainly help to protect the Grinch from being hunted and turned into green eggs and ham.
So the Who's are genocidal. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
they basically
hunted,
wiped out the Grinches.
Yes.
Talking about similar animation styles, let's talk about Dr. Seuss there.
Yeah. I mean,
wait.
Yep.
So that means the Grinches are not mammals. They lay eggs.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
we
never
assume that
seen a
the eggs are
female,
from the
we've-
Grinches.
Yeah, we've never seen a female Grinch. We don't know. Maybe that's true.
So are
they're
they
like
like
platypuses.
well, so they are they like chickens where they lay an egg every day whether there's a Grinch inside? Or are they like Smurfs where Smurfette dumps a bunch of eggs out and then all the Smurfs jizz in the egg pile?
Yes.
That has to be the way the Smurfs work. There's only one woman. She's not tied down to a bed. So they're obviously, there's an egg-laying society.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Again,
I'll allow
This is really.
By the way,
platypus.
Mike,
The
where did you-
platypus. The
Mike, where'd you
platypus
find-
is a mammal and lays eggs.
That's true. The Grinch could be a platypus. Does it have venomous spurs on the back of his heels? I know platypi
Yep.
do.
They do.
Hey, Mike, you said you found that online. Did you?
Yes.
When you said online, did you mean written in an insane asylum on a wall?
That's crazy. Yeah. So
I
I
typed
mean, it
in-
implies that there's this whole universe that Dr. Seuss had created where all these things interact with each other.
Yes, and I typed in what is the missing link between the Who's and the Grinch, and yeah, it's
Fans are amazing.
yes.
Okay, so I'm not sure that answered any of our questions regarding that topic, but we often talk about music here too. Do you guys have any thoughts on the music in either of these movies? I think Danny Elfman did the Jim Carrey one, and there were some kind of hip hop songs that I read some reviews didn't really like very much in The Grinch. Any thoughts on music?
I would say that How the Grinch Stole Christmas has one of the most popular hip hop Christmas songs that gets played over and over. And that year was like overplayed all the time because Jim Carrey and Busta Rhymes, The Grinch, was blasted all the time. Like it was huge. People did it at parties. It was like the thing. And it was just because it was Busta Rhymes in a kid's movie like this. And Jim Carrey, for that matter, singing. And he's actually performs You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Jim Carrey does as well. Not just the Grinch 2000. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are on that. I mean, there's Ben Folds, NSYNC. Jim Carrey does multiple different ones. Smash Mouth. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Bare Naked Ladies. Like there are a ton of current people that were very popular at the time that did songs on here or a version of a song and just kind of made it their own.
And how does it make you feel that the How the Grinch Stole Christmas is almost 25 years old?
Sad.
I'm finding lots of things are suddenly 25 years old, and I'm just kind of like, ugh. Whatever.
So speaking of age, I'm curious. So we are all from an older generation. I mean, Kyle,
I may be the youngest.
You are, but you're still from the generation that, you know, as a kid, you would still watch The Grinch when it came on, you know, ABC or CBS or whatever channel it was on. So my question is, between these two movies, you know, no one's really said, yes, I absolutely love this one over this one. It's kind of a mixed bag, or it's, I've watched them, I don't need to watch them again. So my question is it because we are so enamored with the original 1966 version that was so well done, as Tom put it, you know, built into perfection of this animation that was such a classic, and we're at the age now that is our childhood, and these are not, and these don't work because they don't match our childhood. Is that
hard to know? Yeah, that's hard to know if you can untangle that in your brain, because that's baked into you from such a young age, watching that on TV, you know, and it gets stuck in your head. I think it's harder because we talk sometimes on this podcast, and I think we share some cynicism for remakes and money grabs and fan service. I think we all are on board with not liking that to some extent. So I think that may predispose us to have negative opinions of some of these things rather than taking them as face value. Because when I was a kid, there was one Grinch, and that's all you got to see. So therefore, that will always be my Grinch because it was the Grinch when I was a kid. But for someone born, you know, in 2002 or 2003, and was a young kid and saw these movies, yeah, I would be interested to see if they think of these as like their holiday films, if they're familiar with the Grinch, and if they watch the old one, what they would think. Does that look old and out of date? It's so dumb. It's so slow. It's the animation's not good. You know, I think it's a matter of perspective there, and it's hard to know how tangled that is in my brain. But I think we talked about music, right? And I think that's one thing the original Grinch has, is that song, You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, where Thurl Ravenscroft gives one of the most incredible vocal performances, like talking that, you know, and it's still played today on the radio, you know, like Light 104 around here plays it all the time, and it's like an iconic Christmas song. So for me, that is my Grinch and my Grinch song. So I don't pay much attention to the music in these, but I could see that a young child who knows these bands gets into these songs, you know, that could be their version of what I have with the old one.
And the reason it kind of keyed me in was because Gabe earlier had said, well, that's not how the Grinch sounds, or that's not how the Grinch would say that. And that made me think, is it because we are so used to hearing the Grinch from the original cartoon, and anything else that's not right, because that's not the Grinch, because we're used to a different Grinch.
Right. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can agree with that. I think, though, we also have a tendency to think that newer is always better. And I don't think that's definitely not the case. That it's not always better, and we don't always really need these remakes of things. Sometimes they really do have a way to improve upon these stories, or the acting, or whatever. But I think we discount the talent from past generations and what they were able to accomplish and what they created, and we just always think we need to do this for a new generation, and I don't think that's always true.
I think Tom said it the best, is that they built perfection, and why do we want to screw that up? Because the original Grinch it's the short story as an animation that is quick, it's to the point, it gets all of the actual arcs that, you know, the story is trying to portray, that Dr. Seuss tried to tell. He does it in a very whimsical, magical way, and no one needs to make that better. Like, it is already better. Like, and so I think that's where I struggle with. I don't think necessarily remakes or reinventing some of these stories for new generations is bad, but sometimes maybe like what Kyle said, just because we can, should we? Because there are stories that we could redo, but is this one that we really should redo?
All right. Let's put it to a vote.
Wow, that got real heavy.
Tom.
Yeah. 2000.
Kyle.
The other one.
Andrew.
The Grinch from 1966.
There goes Andrew voting for a movie we're not watching again.
Oh, The Grinch.
And Gabe.
Yeah, 2018.
All right. Benedict Cumberbatch compared the Grinch to his motion capture performance of Smaug in the Hobbit trilogy. For this character, a little bit like Smaug. He lives in a mountain and he's quite angry and isolated and alone, so apart from talking to Max, who doesn't verbalize. It helped for the character in this instance. It does get very weird if you're doing quick fire dialogue and you're not in the room with the people you're acting with. The actual time it took to apply Jim Carrey's Grinch makeup was around 2 hours and 15 minutes, despite Carrey's claim that it took 8. Makeup artist Kazuhiro is very vocal about his difficult experience working with Carrey. On set, Carrey was really mean to everybody, and at the beginning of the production, they couldn't finish. Hiro said, after 2 weeks, we only could finish 3 days worth of shooting schedule because suddenly he would just disappear. And when he came back, everything was ripped apart. We couldn't shoot anything. Things escalated to the point where Hiro had to leave the production for a few days until director Ron Howard called him back, promising that Carrey would keep his temper in check. Hiro returned to production to continue applying Carrey's makeup, but cited it as the worst experience of his life and one of the reasons why he initially retired from the business.
Wow.
Wow. That's sad.
Yeah.
That's what that really is. That's just sad.
And, you know, after when I read that and I put it in, the trivia, I remember the whole documentary about Carrey and was it being Andy Kaufman?
Mm-hmm.
And like he spoke about how that messed him up after doing Man on the Moon, which was right before this. He said it messed him up for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of shows it, or maybe he's just trying to gloss over, being an asshole for a few years, but who knows?
Yeah, because there were rumors going around that they had to bring in like torture guys that
help with torture, right?
Yeah,
how
that
to deal with
you
it.
can endure.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Because Jim Carrey was having such a problem with the makeup and it was so uncomfortable that they had to mentally train him to be able to get through it. There were rumors like that were all over the place. It's weird. Yeah.
Okay. While I tally the votes, why don't you gentlemen tell us about what you are recommending this month? We will start it off with Kyle.
No, we won't, because Kyle can't open his Cinesmack episodes list. Hold on, no, I'll start. Yep, okay. I got it. It's open. My internet's fast. Shit, it's not as fast as I thought. Shit. Okay. Yes, I'm going to recommend a movie I think I briefly spoke about last month, but didn't recommend because I went with Conclave. So this is not a holiday movie at all, but it is in the spirit of the season. We celebrate, we know the main man is the reason for the season, right? So I saw a horror movie, I guess you could call it a psychological thriller, starring Hugh Grant and a couple of actresses I feel bad now for not looking up. I should have been better prepared, but it is called Heretic. And it is a very interesting sort of film meditation on faith and truth and belief that I think presents interesting challenges and sparks interesting ideas and conversations about those things. So if you get a chance, and I think Hugh Grant is genuinely kind of chilling and terrifying and almost like it's a very dark, twisty film. I like it quite a bit. So I would recommend Heretic.
All right.
Can I ask you a question, Kyle?
Yes.
So yesterday, Hugh Grant was nominated for a Golden Globe for his role in Heretic in the best acting in a musical or comedy. How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
I feel like that he was miscategorized.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm reading that right. Okay.
Yeah, which is also an award I won at Miss Kitty's once. I was miscategorized.
Andrew?
I don't even know where to go with that one. Okay. So my recommendation is going to be, I guess, a newer one that just kind of came out, and it's probably, it's not going to win any magical Academy Awards. It's not going to be the top of probably everybody's playlist, but I thought it was well done. It was cute. It was funny. It's definitely made for kids, and that's Dear Santa. It's about a kid that has dyslexia, and he writes a letter to Santa, but he spells Santa to Satan, and so his letter goes to Satan, and Jack Black appears and is Satan. And so there are quite a few funny, humorous parts. Like I said, it kind of has a mix of adults and kids. Definitely directed more towards kids, but it's really cute. I had fun. It was a great popcorn movie. I laughed a lot. But I like Jack Black. So, and evidently Jack Black and Kyle Gass are friends again, because Kyle Gass makes a cameo appearance in this movie. So
I'm not going to lie. I kind of want to see it.
It's really cute. I enjoyed it a lot. So.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Gabe?
Well, I'm going to go with kind of the predictable choice here, and we discussed it during the episode.
Blade Runner?
Nope, not this time. Next month will be Blade Runner. I don't even know what we're doing next month yet. So if you want to watch a Grinch movie, just go back to the classic from 1966. It's only a half an hour long. It's wonderful animation. The voice work is fantastic. Boris Karloff does both the narration and the Grinch's voice, and he has the voice of the Grinch. And like Andrew said, maybe that's because that's what I was introduced to as a child, but that's what I feel like the Grinch would sound like. Go back and watch the original. You can find it. You can stream it online. I think I watched it on Peacock or something. I highly recommend it. The animation is great. There's a part where the Grinch hatches his plan, and he has this grin, and it's this really giant grin, and even the hairs sticking up on his head kind of like form a grin of their own, and it's just really well done. So I would recommend going back to the original. It's closer to the book. It's just well performed. It's well done. Or if you want to, you can go and watch any of the Warner Brothers cartoons, like what Tom mentioned before, Tom and Jerry or Bugs Bunny or any of those by Chuck Jones. They're still really entertaining and still really relevant. So that'd be my recommendation.
This podcast brought to you by Paramount Plus.
Maybe. I don't know. Are they on Paramount Plus? I don't know.
Thank you, Gabe. Fun fact, the Grinch was the first thing Gabe saw when he came to America.
It could be.
When he was 18, back when it was released.
Didn't
Do you
he
know how
say,
long ago that was?
didn't he say something like, "This is crazy, in Soviet Russia, Christmas steel Grinch"?
Yes, exactly. Tom.
As a dated reference for all the people in Branson, Missouri.
How the Christmas stole the Grinch. Got it.
Yeah, we're huge in Branson. So something we have to decide, do you do a movie related to what we talked about, or do you do a more recent one? So I'm going to do both. So I'm going to do a movie about a misunderstood green-skinned villain. And it's Wicked. And it's the first part of a two-part movie. The second part will be out next Christmas. I'm not a huge fan of the musical. I saw it on stage and it was great, but it's not something that I stuck out too much in my mind. But I really loved the movie version of it. And I know people get caught up in the length of it. And but it's a deep movie. It's got a lot of just some moral lessons about, what it means to be evil and kind of where that comes from. And God damn it, Ariana Grande is adorable in it. She's really funny and likable, and Cynthia Erivo is also very good in it. Jeff Goldblum is funny, playing his usual Jeff Goldblum self. So I really, really liked it. I'm trying to get to the theater to see it a second time. It was just kind of yeah, go see it. It looks good and a lot of good buzz, and I liked it way more than I thought I was going to. Exceeded my expectations. So, yeah. So, and it should be seen on a big screen. It is a large, beautiful movie. The cinematography is gorgeous. You really should see it on the biggest screen you can.
And if you wait until after Christmas, they're going to be releasing the sing-along version, the karaoke sing-along version.
You don't have to do
could go see. You could go
with
see
all
that
the
one.
obnoxious. You don't have to go see it with the obnoxious. So what Andrew's saying is go now. You
Run,
do not
don't
want to
walk.
go see. You do not want to see it with the obnoxious Wicked fans. Just go see it and enjoy it. And it's
Have you ever wanted to see a musical yelled at by less talented musicians?
Yeah.
What is the point of that?
Yeah. Do they all have to stand? It's unnecessary. It's
No.
2 hours.
No,
and 40
but they
minutes.
will.
They will.
All right. Thank you, Tom. I will not run or walk to go see it.
Come on.
Let's get hammered and go fight all those kids at Wicked.
Okay, let's do it. We all need leather jackets that say Cinesmack on the back.
Yeah, let's get full to the brim on Dollaritas.
Right.
And smash up a Wicked screen.
I love it. All right. Well, originally I was going to suggest Gladiator 2, but I can't do that in good faith. And we talked about it before we started recording, and so I'm going to recommend a movie that we also talked about during recording, or when we weren't recording, and it's from 1993, directed by Donald Petrie. Written by Mark Steven Johnson. It stars Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, and Margaret, and that is Grumpy Old Men. If you haven't seen it, probably I'm talking to the younger audience. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. Watching these two comedy greats work off of each other is absolutely hilarious. And I actually turned to Amanda and I said, well, after seeing Anne Margaret, I said, I think I know where my type came from. And that was from this movie. Like, Anne Margaret is just so absolutely beautiful. And she plays off of these two really, really, really well. So if you haven't seen Grumpy Old Men, go watch it. And if you have seen it, but it's been a long time, go revisit it. It ages very well. It's really good. Plus, you got Burgess Meredith in it and Ozzie Davis.
And there's a second one.
Yeah, there is a second one. Not as good.
It's not quite as good, but it's still pretty clever.
Yep, it is.
Grumpier old men.
All right. Who's ready to find out who won? I can tell you right now, it's not Gabe. Because he is Speaking of grumpy old men.
Oh. You started it. You pronounced his last name correctly this show. I noticed that.
Yeah.
And since you said that,
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
That could be.
There it is.
Yeah, I really prefer when people mangle my last name.
no.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is the Grinch!
All right. 11-5.
That's such bullshit.
So how is that not me?
Well, because you didn't really like either one of these movies.
Well, yeah, I can't. Yeah, there is no winning.
You
that
were very
situation,
Grinch about the Grinch
yes.
movies.
Yeah, when I watched them, I was like, this is gonna be tough. I had a hard time getting through them, honestly.
Well, right now, I just want to, since this is the start of our 15th year doing this, I was going to try and figure out how many minutes we've talked about movies, but it was going to take a very long time to look them all up. So I just want to say thank you to the four of you. I look forward to this every month. I look forward to spending time with my friends and discussing discussing movies. Thank you, Kyle, for writing the scripts, for our voiceover. Tom, thank you for doing the graphics for the pod. And Andrew, thank you for handling Twitch and doing the graphics for that. Gabe, thank you for being you.
And doing nothing.
You're
get it.
always there for moral support.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't meaning that as a slam against you. I also want to thank Ron, who is the voice of our very own monkey. He always dedicates getting these. Once Kyle sends me the script, I send it off to him. He records them as soon as he can and sends it back to me. And I mean, honestly, there are a lot of us that put a lot of work into this podcast. And I just want to say thanks. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for spending your holidays with us and our very own Grinch, Grinch Rowald over there.
Humbug.
His name starts with a G.
It does.
It does.
Please leave.
I'm the last of my species.
You are one of a kind, Mr. Rowald. Please leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can also follow us on Instagram now. Just search Cinesmack. If you want to listen to an unedited version of the show, you can catch us live on Twitch whenever we record an episode. And we are getting better about posting that on social media to let you guys know that we will be recording soon. We also now have a YouTube channel where you can watch the recorded Twitch videos. In January, we visit the golden age of sci-fi as the Forbidden Planet takes on The Day the Earth Stood Still. For Andrew, Tom, Kyle, Gabe, and myself, happy holidays. Thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
You're a mean one, Mr. Gray, with a twinkle in your eye. You got the charm of a serpent and a laugh that could make angels cry. You're a trickster, Mr. Gabe, with a mind as sharp as steel. Every plan you hatch is wicked, it's almost surreal. Oh, Mr. Gabe, you're up to no good, sneaking round the neighborhood. Turn every word, a master of mischief, you are for sure. You're the whisper in the shadows, Mr. Gabe, like a fox in the snow. Every step you take is silence, no one will ever know. Your schemes are endless, Mr. Gabe. You're always one step ahead. With a grin, sinister and sly, you're the stuff that's under our bed. Oh, well, oh, Mr. Gabe, you're up to no good, sneaking round the neighborhood. You twist and turn every word, a master of mischief, you are for sure. Whisper in the shadows, Mr. Gabe, like a fox in the snow. Every step you take is silence, no one will ever know. Your schemes are endless, Mr. Gabe. You're always one step ahead. With a grin, sinister and sly, you're the stuff that's under our bed. Oh, well, oh, Mr. Gabe, you're off for sure. Oh, to no good, sneaking round the neighborhood. You twist and turn every word, a master of mischief, you are for sure.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.